Not just, hey, making sure how you doing, everything okay, but how do we help people navigate their way through kind of the noise and negativity of the world right now?
I talk to people all the time about high value and low value. What tends to burn people out and make them really stressed out is when they put as much effort into a low value action or opportunity as they do high value, because they're not getting as much out of it as they're putting into it, and they will spin and burn out from that. Yeah. So really trying to help our leaders, both personally and professionally as a team, understand what things are high value actions and what things are low value.
Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
Hello, everyone. It's Jason, and welcome back to the Thermostat podcast. This past year, as we all know, has been a very strange, disorienting, but also hopeful in some ways. Weird time. And as always, I hope that this podcast meets you where you are. I hope that my purpose with this podcast always is to provide content that is going to engage your mind and heart and help you navigate your way through the world, through life, through business, your career in positive ways. I am more convinced of this than ever, that authentic leadership and compelling cultures are needed more than ever in the world. And so wherever you might be listening, however you may be tuning into this podcast, thank you for being here. Thank you, of course, to everybody who listens, subscribes, shares, rates, all, 5 stars, of course, reviews, all of those wonderful things. That just helps amplify these messages even further into the world and just reach more people and have a bigger impact. So thank you, wherever you are. Thank you for listening out there. I am very excited to invite my guest for today into this chat in just a minute. Lachandra Baker and I were first introduced when we both spoke at really as a part of another conference that by the organization Relay put on. And we were introduced to each other. And I can tell you this about Lachandra, or Law, as you will hear me refer to her in a few minutes. From our very first conversation, I felt a great synergy as I listened to her talk, and certainly the messages that we were sharing about engaging people and about leadership and culture, alignment. I felt connected. And since then, I'm glad to be able to say that we've begun a friendship together, which is really cool. So Lachandra Baker is the senior manager. This is the official now intro. The senior manager for employee engagement for Cover My Meds, which if you don't know about Cover My Meds, then you will look them up and realize they are a very inspiring company with the mission to help people get the medications they need to live healthy lives. She's fun. She's caring, she's passionate, and she's also a cocktail connoisseur. So, Law, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. That was a phenomenal intro. Loved it.
Well, I try my best. You are worth it, so I'm glad to give you that kind of intro. So let's get the important stuff right out of the way. Favorite cocktail of recently, as you think of late, I know you enjoy a great craft cocktail.
I do.
As of late, what would be in your craft cocktail of choice?
It's one of those, it never goes out of style. It's always so good, is a good margarita with a premium tequila. So that is my drink of choice most of the time. And I don't stray too far from it, even though your girl likes her bourbon every now and then too. But tequila is my main squeeze.
I love it. So a margarita, good tequila, and every so often you may sprinkle in a bourbon is what you're saying.
Yes, that's right. So I've
All right.
I've become more of a bourbon connoisseur over the last probably 8, 9 months. But tequila is always my friend. I always tease one of my chef friends who I enjoy her food. I said I'm gonna go buy an agave farm down in Mexico, and you can be my executive chef, and we're just gonna make our own brand of tequila and do it up real nice. So that's the goal, ladies and gentlemen. That's the goal.
I love it. Well, for the last 8 or 9 months, you're not alone in this because if you know, I mean, booze sales have surged as everyone has been in isolation and quarantine and
Yes.
lockdown. So you're not alone there, and certainly many people have needed a nice craft cocktail every once in a while
Yes.
just to make
Yes.
sure that everything feels okay in the world.
Yes, that's very true. Very, very true.
So I want to ask you another question. So I'm interested in this because I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but I'm wondering something about Law's childhood or your
Mm.
upbringing that I may not know that, as you
Mm.
think about it, has kind of shaped what you think about when you think about what it means to be a leader. Or you and I have certainly talked about creating powerful cultures that mean
Yes.
something, teams, groups. I'm wondering from your childhood or your upbringing, what's something that I might not know about you that maybe has shaped the way that you think about what it means to lead or the culture of how important cultures are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the biggest influence of my childhood was that I was raised in a multi-generational house where my grandmother was in the home with us. So we grew up, my grandmother, my mother, my mom and sister. My parents got divorced when I was very young. And so my grandmother, we lived in the house with her so that she could watch us while my mother worked outside of the home. And that upbringing was phenomenally what shaped me to be who I am today. My grandmother was born in 1914, so if you can imagine, during that time, it was very difficult, and for a black woman, especially a black woman being born and raised in the South, because we were born and raised in South Carolina and then moved to Georgia when she was a young girl. So there was a lot of challenges that she had growing up just for race and gender. But what I appreciate so much about my grandmother is that she did not let the limitations that life threw at her limit who she believed she was.
Mm.
And she taught us and she put that belief and confidence in my sister and I growing up and her children as well. But my sister and I were very much big on education and opportunity because my grandmother didn't have it given to her. So she said, once you get your education, no one can take that from you. So never strive to stop learning. And it wasn't just formal education, it was how do you teach yourself? How do you learn? How do you grow? That whole growth mindset, I think that's super popular now. She had it many, many, many years ago. She
Yeah.
didn't call it that, but that's what it was. And we never stopped learning, and that's the thing. Even as I approach my fifth decade on this beautiful planet, I still learn every day. I grow every day. And it's because of the way my grandmother really set the tone for us. She role modeled it, and we were able to succeed from being around her.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And so do you think that impacts the way? I mean, you're perfectly situated then inside of a large organization, senior manager, employee engagement, to be that
Hmm.
person to help engage people and continuous learning. I mean, some of those themes certainly continue. Do you see that playing out in the role that you're in with Cover My Meds?
Absolutely, because we are a multi generational organization.
Yeah.
And I learn from the younger leaders as much as I teach them. And I think that's such a part of leadership listening. Oh my goodness. I would say that's the most important part of leadership. You need to listen to what the people say around you about what's important to them, listen to what they say that you need to know about yourself. Listen to what they say is happening in the environment that might impact their work every day. I mean, you really have to be a good listener to be able to be a good learner. And
No
so I
doubt.
really think that has helped me tremendously in the role that I'm in, especially when you start talking about engagement, right? That's
Yeah.
the discretionary effort people put into their organization, and they have a choice. And if you make it an environment that they feel supported and valued and respected, they'll give you even more than you can even hope for or imagine. And so that is extremely important in how we instill that in our leaders. Be good listeners and be good learners. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no doubt. And I love that, because when we talk about employee engagement, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, in the world today, people have a choice. And we all, whether we know it or not, we actively choose whether or not we're going to engage, which
That's right.
To bring my mind and my heart into whatever it is that we're doing. And yet, what's so fascinating or so interesting, and I'm interested in your observations, is over the last calendar year, let's just say, people have been asked to quarantine, to be in isolation, to work remotely. And then certainly we've had so many things swirling around in the world, not only a global pandemic and health concerns, civil unrest and racial divide. We've had this economic uncertainty, political uncertainty. We've had all these things with employees then have had to deal with all of these changes and remote working and isolation, feeling disconnected, and certainly all the uncertainty that's around them. What have you learned, or what have been some of your observations in terms of not only keeping people safe, but how do you keep them engaged in an environment like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Jason. No doubt it has been an uncertain and scary time for a lot of people. One of the things that I always practice and I try to help my team think about is we have to meet people where they are,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And you start talking about employees, you have some who are single and live by themselves, so there truly is a loneliness and isolation there. Then you have others who are married and have kids, so they not only have to worry about their day job, but they have to worry about how do you educate your child who's also home with you, right? And
Yep.
spend that time with them as well. But then there's a very real thing of being able to separate work and home when you're at home all the time, right? And so a lot of that I think about in all those aspects. I think about, you know, do we ask people what they need? Do we ask people how are they and we wait for the answer and we don't accept I'm doing okay if you're not doing okay? Some of it is just being more curious to not accept the first answer that is given because a lot of people we quick to say, "Oh, I'm fine," and keep moving. You're like, "How can you be fine? I'm not fine."
Right.
And I think that's the thing is also as leaders, you have to show some vulnerability and say, you know what, this is impacting me this way. So I want to tell you about what I'm dealing with every day and some things I'm thinking about and how I'm coping. And I think that gives them permission then to also be real and vulnerable. We have to lead by example in that space. And it's been really amazing to me. Our entire team has been talking about flexibility and mental health way more than I think any corporation probably has ever. This time has been really a time for people to be very open and honest about what's happening. And then we're able to give them resources to feel better. If they need somebody to talk to, we can, address that. If they need some help with childcare, we can address that. If they need help with flexible time and work life balance, we can help them with that. But it really takes being open and vulnerable and asking people, what do you need? Not making assumptions, but really asking a question, what do you need? And then be able to help provide those resources for folks.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, you know this. I talk about the idea that conversations are the currency for change. Conversations are the currency for change. And so when we talk about engaging people, one of the things that my observations as to supporting many teams and organizations across industries is to watch over the last 12 months across industries, and again, different kinds of teams, and some that are their industry has been totally disrupted, and some where all of a sudden new pathways have opened up and they've actually been experiencing success in the midst of all of these challenges. So very interesting times for many different companies. But one of the things that I've observed is that our places of employment, these places that we often spend 8, 10, 12 hours of our waking days, where we're giving our minds, our hearts to the work. And certainly, even though we might be being asked to work remotely or isolated or stay at home to work, we're still expected to perform and to be effective and to do all the things with our jobs. So all of those things, and yet our places of work in the midst of all that's circling in the world right now become these spaces that are tremendous opportunities for us to engage with our people and help them actually navigate their way through everything that they're feeling. So instead of just asking the question, hey, how you doing? And is everything okay? And them just saying, oh, everything's cool. And some companies are just, let's just get to, back to business. And yet what I've observed is that the organizations that are helping their people navigate through the waters that they've been experiencing and helping them have those conversations that are the currency for change have helped them, even in an environment that's been, isolating and sometimes disconnecting. It means they're even more intentional about connecting.
Yes.
But you have to be proactive. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what are those conversations that need to be happening right now in organizations? What are those opportunities maybe to engage with your people, not just hey, making sure how you doing, everything okay, but how do we help people navigate their way through kind of the noise and negativity of the world right now?
I have no doubt that there will be time in the near future, I'm not sure when, but where there will be power in congregating again, power in bringing your whole team together, your entire company and organization together in one space for that powerful keynote speech, that discussion that has to happen as a team, an entire organization about leadership and culture and mindset. But until then, we are in a virtual world. And so if I can add value to your team, your company, or organization through a virtual keynote speech, or just helping your team and organization have the conversation that's the currency for change that you need to be having internally, I hope you'll track us down and let us know how we can be helpful at jasonvbarger.com.
Yeah, it's so many, it's so leveled, right? I think about one of the things I talk to people all the time about: high value and low value. What tends to burn people out and make them really stressed out is when they put as much effort into a low value action or opportunity as they do high value, because they're not getting as much out of it as they're putting into it, and they will spin and burn out from that.
Yeah.
So really trying to help our leaders, both personally and professionally as a team, understand what things are high value actions and what things are low value. The things that are low value, can you automate them? Are they necessary? Can you delegate them? Like, let's talk about all the different things you can do with those low value ones so that you can then put your focus on the high value ones. And that's also with your personal life, family, friends, relationships, those are the high value ones. Maybe cleaning your house is not. Get a cleaning crew to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like what kind of things can you outsource or push away that don't need your direct attention, and which things do, and start sorting those out, and then putting that energy to those high value ones, and then moving those low value ones to a different bucket. And I think that helps people a lot to really even understand the differences of those things.
Yeah, I think leadership is revealed in crisis. And so oftentimes in these times that we've been experiencing, what it's also revealed to people and maybe given a little bit more of a clarity around is what are those high value things and what are those low value things. And language that I've been talking about with leaders and teams and organizations is the difference between busyness and effectiveness. And for many years, I think we got trapped where we spend so much of our time and our resources in those low value things, those tasks just to keep us busy. But yet the reality is they're not the highest priorities that we have. And so it's that shift. It's that mental shift in our mindset as a leader. And then certainly as entire teams and organizations and cultures to say, no. We understand there are those low value or those busy things that can always keep us busy. But we need to get disciplined and relentless about what are those high value things that are going to get our mind and our heart. And we got to continue to hold each other accountable and really bring that back to that focus. So, I mean, you've been a speaker and a voice at my event, Thermostat Cultures Live. And I talk about this idea of the thermostat and of setting the temperature. And so leaders and cultures every day have the opportunity to either we're going to set a temperature that's really focused on those low value and busy things, or we're going to set a temperature that says, no, we get laser focused on those high value those higher priority things, that it's not just about staying busy, but it's truly about being effective and creating
Yes,
a culture together.
that's right.
And I what I've observed is the organizations that have kept that focus in the midst of all of the things that are swirling in the world right now are the ones that are going to be coming out uh, better aligned through this time.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the key things you just said, Jason, was together. I think so many times, even as leaders, when we have an organization that we're looking after, whether it's a team or the full organization, sometimes we think we have to solve the challenges in front of us, that
Yeah,
we have to be the one coming up with the great ideas to solve the problems. But when you actually engage your team and say, hey, team, we're looking at this problem. Let's talk about possible solutions together. And you start that brainstorm and you start, having them push their ideas out there and start talking about it. And then there's this thing that starts happening. It's the process of, it's not even the outcomes of whose idea is used. It's the process that everyone has a voice in what's happening.
no
And
doubt.
then they decide together what they do as an outcome. And
No
then they're
doubt.
much more bought into that. And then the engagement level is so much higher, and then they feel really proud about what does transpire because they had something to do with it from start to finish. And I think a lot more leaders need to be thinking about that. I got big problems we need to solve. How are we going to solve them together?
Absolutely. I mean, you know this, but in my book, I talk about the fact in thermostat cultures. In that book, I talk about the idea that we live in a participatory world, and that so
Yes.
no longer I guess there was a time when somehow we bought into this idea that leaders were about being at the top of the pyramid and would bark out orders and just tell everybody to do, and everybody magically just fell in line. But the
Right.
reality is, I'm not so sure that ever really worked in terms of engaging people.
That's right.
And yet the reality is, what engages people is to involve them and let them participate and help them share in the creation of that culture that we're trying to create together. and
Yes.
and right now in the world, I think, what if anything, that 2020 and certainly moving forward 2021, like what it's has been revealing to us is that leaders and the most authentic and compelling cultures are about connections rather than
Hmm.
divisions.
Absolutely.
That they're about
That is a
connections
100% the
rather
truth.
than divisions. And so much, of course, has been about division, and
Yeah.
there's been civil unrest. There's been important rallying around social justice and addressing systemic racism and change, and all of
Yeah.
these things. And yet also there's so much that divides, and yet the
Hmm.
best leaders, teams, and cultures are the ones that are saying, wait, hold on, let's realize that it's about all of us, and how do we try
Hmm.
to build connections rather than divisions. And yet, man, these are complex, challenging, tough stuff. I'm,
Yes.
I'm interested, like, what's your kind of reaction to any of that this idea of leaders and cultures right now, of having this opportunity to try to stay focused on connecting rather than dividing?
Yeah, I think so much of it, the leader does set the tone. I think about my particular team, and I absolutely show vulnerability. I tell them when I don't know the answer to something that I'll have to look it up or research it. I'll tell them when something doesn't sit well with me. If something in the news happened and it impacted me or touched me in a certain way, I'll tell them about it. I'm a parent and I have a child that's
Yeah.
just started college this year in the midst of 2020 and everything. So I think about her a lot and I worry about her. And so I'm very open with that. I say, I always want to believe that I've instilled all the foundational things she needs for success in her, and now it's up to her to realize it. But I share those things with people. And I think so much of division comes from not trying to understand people whose perspectives or lifestyles may be different from yours.
Mm.
And I think when you take the time and you stop and you say, I'm going to share this about me, can you share something about you? And you really seek to understand and have acceptance, because I hate the word tolerance. A tolerance, it equates that something is better than something else. I think acceptance is the word. Like, I accept that we are different, and I accept you as you are, and I accept that we can go in this life together being different, but also realizing when we're the same.
Yeah.
And I think so much of that is what we have to start looking at to stop dividing and start uniting. I think we just are missing that currency of conversation. Let me hear from you.
Yeah.
Tell me what keeps you up at night. Let me tell you what keeps me up at night. What makes you afraid? Let me tell you what makes me afraid. It's like sharing those personal things, those things that make you afraid or make you happy. Like so much of that is what we're missing in society. If we just took the time to have a real conversation with somebody, show some vulnerability and some humanity, I think we could be so much farther along. And I think I'm starting to see a lot of that though now. I've seen a lot of multi generational, multicultural ethnicities and races coming together to bring unity. And that gets me excited. I've
Yeah.
participated in a lot of marches and conversations and events that get me so just I feel elated to see so many different kinds of people coming together and just in the name of humanity.
Yeah.
And that makes me excited to think that my children and my children's children and even my children's children's children will have a different outlook on life and perspective. And I hope we're a catalyst for that right now.
Yeah, no, and I think that spirit of everything that you just said is about making sure that we seek and the connections that we have with one another, and
Yes.
why and I've shared this with you personally is that why I'm a white male. I mean I'm a bald white pale dude, and yet I need to be a part of the conversation, right?
Yes, of
And
course.
we need to have a mix of people and diverse thoughts and backgrounds, and I've needed to take the posture, certainly with a lot of social justice issues and things, of trying to listen and seek to
Yes.
understand, but also not be on the sidelines, and
Yes.
willing to be a part of the conversation, and to be willing to reach out to friends of no matter who you are, what your background is, and to say, let's have a conversation that's the currency for change. But it's at that I think at the spirit of it, which is what you were just saying, is seeking connection with humanity
Yes.
rather
Absolutely.
than the things that divide, and
That's
try.
right.
Um, I'm so aware of that. Certainly in the world that we're in right now, is that
Mhm.
authentic leadership and cultures are going to be about being open and inclusive, and trying to
Yes.
make sure that we have conversations that are seeing the connections with each other, and ultimately
Yes.
saying, whether you're a team, an organization, whatever it is, you're coming together to for a mission that's greater than you. How are we going to move
Mhm.
forward together?
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And I see so much more of it now. I mean, I think the great equalizer was everybody having to be remote and being quarantined, and people are like, you see people's dogs in their videos. You hear
Yeah.
people's, yelling across the room with their spouses. You hear the mailman ringing the doorbell. I mean, there's so many things that were just human that we all kind of laugh about and chuckle about because we're all experiencing it at the same time. That was such a, to me, eye-opening, great equalizer where we're like, yeah, work from home has its little idiosyncrasies, and it's funny sometimes, and it's crazy sometimes, and it's wild, and we're balancing so many things, but it made us human together.
Yeah.
It made us experience these things together so that we found some commonality in all of that, and also built some empathy, because I think that's the biggest thing, is having empathy for someone else so that you understand a little bit more where they're coming from and how you can help them, and how you can move forward together, because I think that's the important part. You can't leave people behind in this world, no matter whether it's in business, life, community, whatever. It's like if you have the ability to move forward, reach your hand back and pull somebody forward with you so you're all going together.
Yeah, and I think we're getting better at defining that that's what it means to lead. That's
Yes.
what it means to lead. And again, I'm more convinced of this than ever, that if you didn't think developing people and developing culture and engaging your people, if you didn't think that was important before 2020, then
Oh,
a crisis reveals leadership. And
sure
right
does.
now, many different leaders, teams, and organizations are realizing if they want to go somewhere, wherever they want to go as a team or an organization, they're going to have to go together.
That's
And so
right.
we're going to have to align ourselves and connect with one another, and to then lead with empathy and try to seek
Yes.
to understand, and then together say, all right, where are we going to go and how are we going to do this together? And that's
Right.
just what leading is going to be. I believe that the future of leadership, this term that gets thrown around so loosely, but as we begin to understand and maybe even redefine and clarify what authentic leadership really looks like, it's going to be about being
Mm-hmm.
open and inclusive, that celebrates difference and different diversity of thought and experience. It's about
Yeah.
Stimulating progress is going to require courage. It's going to require us to see new ways of operating, but we're going to have to connect, and we're going to have to intentionally seek solutions together where we're taking steps. And
that's right.
Again, step at a time,
Right.
knowing that it takes time, but
Yes.
that
And you can't be afraid to make a mistake either. You can't be
yeah,
afraid you can't be perfect. We're not going to be perfect. I tell people all the time, perfection is a fallacy. Excellence is what is always achievable. You can always be excellent. You will never be perfect. And I
yeah,
think people have to get that perfection mindset out of here, but really bring that excellence mindset in. And so you talk about, what does excellent look like? And for each of us, it's going to be a little different. But if we cast that vision, and I think that's what leaders really do, they cast vision, and then they help people move along that line, that journey to meet that vision. And I think that's what's going to be so important. And that's again where that listening comes from, is once you cast that vision, you help people see it, you ask them the question to make sure they understand it and understand what they're capable of doing. Because sometimes people are afraid to step out because they don't want to make a mistake. And as a leader, we have to give people the confidence and the room to, when they do make a mistake, to learn from what they did and to continue moving forward and get better with every step you take. And I think that's something that we've really learned a lot. I believe I know over the 2020 year. Just really, it's not about not making mistakes. It's like, how do you recover when you do?
yeah, absolutely. And language helps drive behavior. I talk about that all the time. Language helps drive behavior. And so I love that idea of excellence, but we have to be able to clarify, what is it? And for each person,
That's
it
right.
may be different, but to be able to clarify on our team and our organization, this is how we define what excellence looks like. And
That's right.
and excellence also may be that we're okay to make mistakes,
That's right.
and that we're actually going to go on the journey together. But however we define excellence, we've got to be
Yes.
able to articulate it and describe it, because if we
That's
can't
right.
describe it, we can't define it, then we can't be
That's
surprised
right.
when it doesn't exist.
That's
So
right.
language helps drive that behavior of saying, if this is what we strive for, then let's be able to articulate to one another, and then let's begin to hold it out in front of us and begin to go.
Yes. That's right. Love it.
I love it.
So good.
Law, it is a pleasure. I love seeing your smiling face. I love every time we get to chat. Thank you for taking time. We're at our time now, but I know there will be a next conversation that's the currency for change. I thank you for all the work that you're doing inside Cover My Meds and the people I know that you're impacting, but then even beyond that, out into the world, and in the way that you're showing up as a leader, and the way that you are, the culture that you create just with the people around you. Then you set a temperature that really empowers other people to show up too. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Jason. It's been such a pleasure. The best part of 2020 is that we began our friendship, and I look forward to 2021 when it gets stronger and stronger, and 2022 and beyond. But that's a beautiful thing to happen in 2020, that we got to be connected. So I appreciate everything that you're doing in this space, and just who you are, how you show up authentically every day as a leader. So thank you for bringing me on the show and allowing me to give you a little bit of my perspective. And I hope that all of your listeners feel more empowered and more encouraged to stand in their own authenticity as well.
You're the best, Law. Thank you for joining me. And for everybody out there listening, I hope this, as always, was a great point of your day and helped, as Law just said, give you a little fuel, hopefully a little juice, a little bit of something to just help breathe oxygen into you. And I look forward to not only my next chat with Law, whenever that is, but for all of you out there listening, I hope you'll continue to, keep listening, keep tuning in, keep checking it out. There's going to be more great conversations coming, and conversations that are the currency for change. Again, all of us, the future of leadership is you, is me, is us. It's all of us, and we all are ambassadors for the culture that we're trying to create. So stay connected at jasonvbarger.com and at jasonvbarger on social media, and certainly keep tuning into the Thermostat podcast for more. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.